You're watching Court TV Live. I'm Kelly Craft. In today for Ted Rowlands, we have some breaking news for you. There is a verdict in the case we have been watching out of Vermont. This is the case for Joseph Ferlazzo. The jury did deliberate for 3 hours and 30 minutes. The judge has just called for the jury. Let's go in.
Please be seated. Ms. Reno, I understand the jury has reached a verdict. How do you find Mr. Ferlazzo on the count of first-degree murder, guilty or not guilty? Ms. Jantz, would you like us to poll?
I would, please.
And Mr. Zago, is that your verdict, guilty or not guilty?
All right, if you've noticed that we can't hear the audio right now, they are saying the jurors' names. So, of course, we cannot reveal the names of the jurors in this case. But what we can tell you that we have heard the verdict, and he is being found guilty. The jurors have found him guilty of first-degree murder. 7 women and 5 men have been deliberating this case. Took them over 3 hours to reach this verdict, saying that he's guilty of first-degree murder for the death of his wife, 22-year-old Emily. Let's listen again.
Thank you so much for your service. It's clear you were very thoughtful throughout the trial. Really appreciate how you were always on time, you were always listening, taking notes, and really studying the evidence as it was coming in. Really appreciate your time in this case. Thank you, and you're excused with the great thanks of the court. All right. By the state.
Judge, just obviously that Mr. Ferlazzo continue to be held without bail.
Judgment of guilt entered at this time.
Yes.
And like the opportunity to file post trial.
Yes. Thank you, Judge.
I know what the time limits usually are, but I'd give you a bit more if that's what you want.
I do. In light of the holidays coming up, I'd like until January 15th.
Any objection?
No, Judge.
January 15th, any response from the state will give you 3 weeks to respond, if that's all right with you. And so we'll set it sometime in mid-February. So 3 weeks would be about February 3rd.
Just reminding the court of my medical schedule. We can deal with it because there'll be a PSI and so forth.
All right. Anything further from the defense?
No.
Schedule a PSI in this matter?
Yes.
We'll schedule a pre-sentence investigation report, and we'll come back on any motions filed and then for sentence.
Thank you.
Thank you, Judge.
And there you have it. Joseph Ferlazzo Jr., guilty of first-degree murder, again accused of killing his wife, shooting her twice in the head, and then dismembering her body. You're taking a look at the people inside the gallery reacting to the verdict. Obviously, some high emotions there in that courtroom in Vermont. This was a situation where He was significantly older than Emily. They got married in Vermont on the beautiful Lake Champlain. Then they came back there to celebrate their 1-year anniversary. He took the stand in his own defense, describing their relationship, which seemed a little bit out of the ordinary, how he was interested in having some other partners, and Emily would get upset with him at these occurrences. And at times he said that she would become violent with him, throwing wine bottles at him and physically assaulting him when he was on the stand. At first he really was describing a lot of the physical violence, but then later on in his testimony he was saying, well, it really didn't hurt me, it just kind of was normal. But you have to wonder, when he was on the stand and he was giving his testimony, if they found it credible, because then the jurors asked to review his testimony when they were deliberating. We do want to bring in Franz Borgard, who is still with us. Franz, I'm not surprised at this verdict of first-degree murder. Are you?
This was a no-brainer. Generally, it is very difficult to prevail on a self-defense argument when you dismember the body after the incident and you try to conceal it. It shows proof of guilty conscience, and jurors just don't buy it. And look, the running theme for Mr. Ferlazzo during the trial was it just didn't add up. Some of his version of what happened, and then combined with his testimony, it didn't add up. And so I was actually surprised that they deliberated as long as they did, because 3 hours is a long time. And this was not a whodunit. So good for them for looking at the evidence and reviewing it. And I think they got it right. Now, sentencing is going to become huge for him, because the court gets two options on sentencing. They can either do a life without parole or 25 to life. So that PSI, that pre-sentence investigation report that you heard, is going to be critical in this case.
Taking a look inside that courtroom, obviously strong emotions after Joseph Ferlazzo was found guilty of first-degree murder. Franz, why do you think the jurors wanted to review his testimony? At first, the judge had asked them, well, do you want to review the entire testimony? And then they said they just want to review his account on the night of the murder, and then after, when his sister Nicole and her boyfriend left the camper until the early morning hours. At that moment, when they said they wanted to review that testimony, I thought, oh, wow, well, maybe they actually are thinking this was some sort of self-defense. I was doubtful of that, but why do you think they wanted to review some of his testimony in this case?
It might have been just to be sure what he said. It might have been that there was a disagreement about the nature of the exchange, and that testimony is clear. Look, at the end of the day, that testimony is critically the most important part of the trial, because it's the distinction between first-degree murder, some kind of manslaughter, or self-defense. So his description of what was going on, his failure to describe a credible scenario where he was acting in self-defense, that is ultimately what I think they hung their hats on. And look, the best place to get that is from his own mouth on the stand. And in addition to that, there were some distinctions between his testimony and his statements to the police. And if I'm a juror, I want to be able to see those distinctions in real time through what he testified to. So good on them for asking for that.
Yeah, one such distinction is that he never mentioned anything to investigators about this physical abuse that he alleged at trial was taking place from his wife, 22-year-old Emily, who was much smaller in stature than him. So he had never told investigators about that, and one of the things he said on the stand is, I really just didn't want anyone else to know about my drama. That's why I never mentioned to my sister that I had killed Emily. So, interesting case that we watched there in Vermont. Found him guilty, the jurors did, of first-degree murder. Franz, we're going to get in a break, but we're going to have more coverage of the guilty verdict in the Joseph Ferlazzo trial. When we come back, Julia Janae is going to join us as well. Stay with us.
Coming soon to Court TV.
It's the biggest story that we're covering.
He is the boogeyman.
Lori Daybell.
She said, "I will have you destroyed."
She's got another murder trial coming up.
A social media sensation, now a suspected killer.
We will not stop fighting. We have no quit.
Sean Diddy Combs arrested on a federal indictment.
The high-stakes trials you don't want to miss. Coming soon. Only on Court TV.
Breaking news on a case we've been following in Vermont. Guilty verdict for Joseph Ferlazzo. The jury did deliberate for 3 hours and 30 minutes. I want to bring in Julia Janae, who is joining us now to talk about your reaction, Julia, to this verdict. Not really a surprise.
Right, not a surprise, but as we see here on Court TV, sometimes you never know what a jury is going to do, even when we have a lot of details that seem to definitely go in favor of the prosecution. Overwhelming evidence in this case, but wow, what a situation and a great example of a defendant being afforded every protection that he is guaranteed through the Constitution. I mean, this is a guy who lied to police, dismembered his wife, killed his wife, tried to cover it up, and yet it's not a situation where we just put him away and throw away the key. He got to go through the process. He objected to his confession being legitimate because of the conditions he was in when he was being questioned. He was able to tell his story on the stand and tell directly to these jurors, hey, I was the victim of domestic abuse from my wife, and this was self-defense. And he had a great lawyer, great team working on his case. So this is how the criminal justice system works. And now I think the jury definitely made the right decision.
Speaking of his story, we did hear him testify. He talked about the moments that he shot and killed his wife. Why don't we go ahead and play that?
So we had like a bunch of throw pillows that we like lined around the bed, like the top of the bed where we slept. So one of the throw pillows was right there, and I swatted her with the throw pillow, and I said, "Stop hitting." And that's when it happened.
What happened?
She said, "That's it, you're dead." And she threw her arm under her pillow, and she pulls her hand out with the Taurus. And
how were you feeling?
I was feeling horrified.
Were you afraid?
I was terrified. Like there was as soon as I saw that, I just felt like this wave of heat, just like red hot. And she started pushing her body up in an instant, and I'm like, no, 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 no. And I don't know, she wasn't stopping. And I was holding my Glock, and she started just coming up at me, and I just fired.
Why?
She was gonna shoot me.
And you were afraid?
Very.
Also with us, criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor Franz Beauregard. Franz, we listened to him on the stand. What were your takeaways from what he just was saying there?
So the biggest issue for me during the entire trial was his failure to report the crime. His actions of dismembering the body made it impossible for law enforcement and these jurors to have a accurate bird's eye view of the crime scene. Think about how different this trial is if, let's give him the benefit of every single doubt in the universe that maybe he's telling the truth. And if he calls the police, then we see the other firearm, we see the Taurus, we see the crime scene in its pristine, undisturbed condition. If he does that, this is an entirely different trial. He may still get convicted. They may still say this is too much force for what you're describing. But by dismembering the body, by trying to conceal things, by not reporting it directly, it just doesn't make sense to me what he's saying. And look, even his testimony, I mean, again, who are these people? Like, they both have firearms because they really don't trust each other, and they get into a skirmish, and he's already holding his Glock. That's his testimony. That was the big issue for me, was the disturbing of the crime scene, and then just the amount of force that was utilized doesn't seem to align with his description.
You know, Kelly, when I'm hearing Franz talk about it with the guns and them holding them, I don't even think on the stand he did a very good job of explaining that part of it. We heard that during opening statements. We heard it coming out during this case. But this whole, we have a fear of each other and that's why we have the guns, he didn't do himself a service on the stand. I mean, he didn't have a great case at all. But I think he actually hurt himself. I think, first of all, dismembering the body was the biggest problem, that it made it impossible for anyone to think that he perhaps feared for his life and was in the right. But there were those other options, the second-degree murder charge that the jury could have come back with, the manslaughter, voluntary manslaughter. Had he done this the way that Franz mentioned, we could see a very different case. But I wonder if we're ever going to get true answers about what happened, because we don't know. Her family doesn't know what happened. This jury, of course, saying that it was intentional, but what happened in that van? For both parties, they seem to be having a good day, meeting his family and enjoying their first-year anniversary. Who knows what actually happened in that van?
Yeah, local media has spoken with her family, Emily's family, throughout the case. We saw a video of them inside the gallery there. Very emotional, lots of hugs. Her mother has talked to the local media saying that we're really hoping for some closure here with this case, and that there really are no words. This is such a horrific tragedy for myself and my family. That's what her mother said.
It's tragic all around, and at least today the jury gave them an answer that no doubt they were hoping and praying for.
Julia, thank you so much. Franz, thank you so much for your insight as well.